Okay, so British and Irish Lions touring squad has now been announced. We know who is going, who's not going. So let's talk a little bit of analysis here. Let's cut right to the chase. So first things first, how right was I? Based on my previous video and based on the selections here, I made a prediction that I think I would get 80% of the selections right. So looking at it, I got 26 of the 36 selections right, which is 72.2%. I have to fiddle the numbers a little bit with you, if I'm being perfectly honest. Doris being taken out due to injury, Doris was going to go if he was injury-free. So with that, would have been 75%. So not too bad. Let's delve into some of these picks a little bit. I'll start off with some of the forwards, and then we'll talk about the backs. So without further ado, big name in there, Henry Pollock. I was of the opinion that a bolter would be going to this squad in terms of a true bolter, in terms of 0 caps. But it appears that it feels like Henry Pollock is the bolter with I think it's just 1 cap to his name. I mean, if you're looking at his recent form, the video that I made was also made before the semi-final. And I think in that one game, I think he single-handedly kicked Sam Prendergast out of the team and put himself in with just that one run, that he made that one break down the sideline. I'm very happy for him. I love that he's in the squad, even though I didn't pick him as my prediction. I just saw there was too many back row options to be put in. With Doris being injured, did that maybe open the door for him a little bit? Maybe, but there's other selections in back row that I also got wrong that we'll get into. But first of all, I've got no problems with the pick. I think it's a great pick. Looking at the front row, Ronan Kelleher is in. I don't have too much of a problem with it. But Cowan-Dickie's been selected over Jamie George, which I can see the sense in. Jamie George, I think, is a very, very good player, but I definitely feel like Cowan-Dickie has been preferred in that England squad to start most of the games. He's younger, he's fresher, and I would say he's probably in better form than Jamie George. I was picking Jamie George more for kind of an experience point of view, a leadership point of view, putting another leader inside the squad. Not saying Cowan-Dickie's not that. I just haven't seen as much articles and talk about it. He could be a great leader, so what do I know? But if you're basing it purely on form on the pitch, I can understand that Cowan-Dickie's in here. I do think he's had a bit of a renaissance in his career over the last year, so I'm not too bothered about that. And Kelleher being in there, I don't mind that either. I don't think there was any Scottish hooker that would have that's at a higher level than Kelleher is, especially with Kelleher having to fill in for a lot when Dan Sheehan was going through his injury recovery and all that jazz. So, I've not got too many issues with that. Second rows was pretty much as I thought it would be, with Beirne, Itoje, Joe McCarthy. But then we've got 2 selections in here that are a bit of a curveball, and that I'd like to talk about. Also, Ollie Chessum in, the only Tigers player in there. Got to get a Tigers representation in, but I think he's more than deserved that position. But let's talk about James Ryan and Scott Cummings. I think James Ryan, I can understand. I think he's a true second row, and when you've got so many back rowers going, it's good to have that true second rower in there. And he's been in and out of the Leinster team and in Ireland with injuries, losing his place somewhat to RG Snyman in that Leinster team. But I think because Andy Farrell probably has that relationship with James Ryan and knows how good he is, and he's probably a huge asset in the line-out as well. I think that's probably why he's going. And then we've got Scott Cummings. This for me is a bit of a question mark. If I'm honest with you, I had to Google how many caps Scott Cummings has, and he already has about 48 caps for Scotland. I think he's a serviceable player, but I think putting him in over Daffy Jenkins for me just felt like a little bit like, I don't get that. That's one I just don't really have an explanation for. Congratulations to him, but I think Daffy Jenkins is probably looking at that selection and thinking, why am I not on the plane instead of this guy? But hey, it is what it is. Josh van der Fleer's in. That's actually filled me with joy as well. This is his first Lions tour, I believe, and I know his form's not been as good in the last year. But in this selection, they found a way to include him and also Pollock, which were 2 players that I was thinking kind of a shame for them to be out of the tour, and I didn't think they would be in the tour, but they are. So Josh van der Fleer, very happy he's in this tour. Talk about some of the people not being put in the forwards. Keelan Doris, seems like we don't know the full story of what his injury is, but the fact that he's not even in the squad basically says to me that this injury is serious, and I'm so sad for him taking over that Irish captaincy from Peter O'Mahony. in the autumn last. Was it autumn? It was the summer tour to South Africa. I think it was the second test of South Africa, something along those lines. And I think he's really captained Ireland really well. There's been criticisms about his captaincy style, talking to the referee, etc. But with this injury that he's got, obviously they don't think he's going to be making it for this tour. Such a shame. I think he's played really well the last year and a half. But it is what it is. Jack Willis is a notable exception. I don't think this is because he's playing in France specifically. I mean, you've got other players in the squad, even playing in the same team as him, like Blair Kinghorn, which we'll talk about the backs later, that are in. I think maybe it's just no international experience. And then there's also the factor, as I've said, that there's just so many back rows to choose from that are also got international experience that, you know, it's almost like Jack Willis, if he was playing hooker and he was like playing that well for hooker, maybe you'd be talking about it. But there's just so many factors, like not playing at international level and also playing in a very highly contested position. You know, I think that's maybe why he's just not within the team. Ben Curry not being selected, boy. I mean, in my selection, I picked both Tom Curry and Ben Curry to be going on the tour. And it's got to be tough being Tom Curry at this position. Yes, you're overjoyed that you're going on the tour, but then your brother's not going. Man, you got to be. It's got to be a bittersweet moment for the Curry family on this one. I just felt like both of them have deserved to go on this tour. I feel like. Sorry, I keep looking at a sheet here, looking for my notes, but I don't know why I've not written about this specifically. But I definitely think both Tom Curry and Ben Curry, both in the Six Nations and for sale, have played just as well as each other at the moment. I don't think really anything really separates them. I mean, they look alike and they're also playing at the same levels. Sometimes it's hard to distinguish on the pitch who is who. So I feel terrible, but again, it's the same thing that I've talked about with Jack Willis. There's such competitions for these back row positions that I get it. Someone at the end of the day had to lose out, and it seems like he is one of those people. So let's talk about the backs. And this one I pretty much almost got right, okay? Daly, Freeman's in. Freeman has been absolutely excellent for Northampton. And Elliot Daly, as I predicted, is probably in there just because, one, his form has been incredible, and two, the flexibility that he can play different positions, as he showed at international level for the Six Nations, is unparalleled. As I said, Six Nations, he played 13, he played wing, he played fullback, and he played all of those for like at least 20 minutes plus, and excelled in each position. At the age of 32, you know, strength to strength, played excellently, keeps playing excellently for Sarries. And I have to say, I'm really happy he's in that team. So well done to him, fully deserved. Looking at the fly halves, Finn Russell, Finn Smith, Marcus Smith. Got 2 out of 3 out of these. Finn Russell, I think this whole talk about Johnny Sexton's going to leave him out the team, that was dumb. Like, he was always going to go. Finn Smith, I think, especially with the performances against the international teams that he played, like France and Italy and Wales, his performances there, and then his most recent performance against Leinster last weekend, put himself in this team. Could not be happier for him. Like, really looking forward to seeing how he does in this Lions squad. And then Marcus Smith has been put in. Now then, Marcus Smith, I think, has been playing well for England in the 15 shirt, covering for George Furbank. At 10 for Harlequins, has not been that great. However, I think he's been picked for a couple of issues. And I think the first one is he's a bit of a fan favourite. I think, you know, he brings crowds. He's an X factor in terms of a player. He's a difference maker. He can create stuff out of nothing. And in that regard, compared to every other player on this team, I think he's second to none. So I think he's been picked on basically his ceiling and what he can provide and what he's shown he can do international level rather than recent form. Now, is Marcus Smith in this squad if Sam Prendergast puts in a blinder of a performance last weekend? In my opinion, no. I genuinely think in that one run that Henry Pollock did last weekend, where he handed off Prendergast and went in for a try, he single-handedly put himself in the squad and kicked Prendergast out. I just think last weekend showed a lot of people, or gave a lot of people the impression that Sam Prendergast is not quite ready for this Lions tour. Which I'm a little bit annoyed about, because I think he is. And I think it's one game. I've had a lot of comments in terms of my selection video and my Leinster video saying, surely this is the game that shows that Prendergast is not ready for this tour. And I think I haven't had a chance to reply to most of you, and what I wanted to reply to a lot of you is like, recency bias is a thing. It's one game. It's obvious Prendergast has an issue against teams that get to him and get under his skin. And I could see the argument either side of Prendergast going. I don't mind too much Marcus Smith going instead of him, because one, he's English, and it's nice to see more English in there. But two, I think Marcus Smith has proved more than Prendergast has at this stage. He just has. And he's been on a previous Lions tour as well. So that he comes with experience. And yeah. You also have three quite distinctive fly halves in terms of play style. You could argue Finn Russell and Marcus Smith is similar, but I don't think that's really true. I think Marcus Smith is more of a... he's the line breaker. He's the one finding the gaps, whereas Finn Russell's more of the doing something crazy to put somebody in space, if that makes sense. And then you've got Finn Smith, who's the ultimate game manager. So I do like the different selections at fly half there. I think they offer a lot of different things. Thomas Williams is in. Jack Morgan's in. Great. Love it. Two Welshmen that I think definitely deserved it. But it does mean Ben White's not in, which is a shame, but I thought that was the way it was going to go. The three scrum halves that I thought were going to go are going. Bundee's going, which I think is no surprise. Hugh Jones. Tuipulotu's going, which I'm glad about, but I think a lot of people thought that was going to happen. Gary Ringrose is going, which I'm surprised about for a couple of reasons. His form of late's not been amazing, and he's also can only play 13 rather than anything else. But I don't mind the move too much. I think it's having a dedicated 13 in there, and if you don't have him, the only other dedicated 13 you've got is Hugh Jones. So fair enough. And the other thing as well, same kind of line of thinking as Marcus Smith. Ringrose has proven that he has the talent to be amazing, to be that top 13 shirt. So I don't mind the selection at all. Who else have we got in here? Oh, okay, so let's talk about back three, where I got it almost right, except from one. So as I said, I already talked about Tommy Freeman and Elliot Daly. Sorry, the naming of the players is all over the place. I just wrote them as they were coming through BBC Sport. Blair Kinghorn in, Hugo Keenan in, predicted both of those, happy with both of those. James Lowe in, Duhan van der Merwe in, predicted both of those, like both of those again. And then the one that I didn't see coming is Mack Hansen. Yeah, I mean, has his form been as good of late? Probably not, but I think Andy Farrell likes him a lot for a couple of reasons. I think his work rate around the pitch when he's at his peak is excellent. And he also goes searching for the ball. He's not just a winger. He can move into first receiver in attacking opportunities. He can move all over the field. And I think that flexibility, not in terms of the shirt, the number on the back of his shirt, excuse me, but just how he puts himself around the pitch and attack, I think is probably why he's on this team. And I don't mind it too much. A lot of people will be saying, well, why not Darcy Graham? Because I think that's the difference, right? I think that's the difference between Hansen and Darcy. Whereas Darcy does attack the line from different angles and different spaces. I don't think he's as comfortable as just filling in at random positions like Hansen is. And also Hansen's Irish, and I think, there's probably a bit of familiarity there for Andy Farrell for going with Hansen. So that's really cool. What else? Gibson-Park's in there, obviously. Alex Mitchell in, very happy with that. Already talked about Thomas Williams. That's all good. There was a couple of positions I missed out. Sorry, again, as I was going through the list here. Going back to the forwards, let's talk about Schoeman is in. That's fine. I think, again, that's another thing that I've said. That's on the same line of thinking as what I've said with Marcus Smith. Gary Ringrose, I don't think he featured that heavily in starting for Scotland in the Six Nations, excuse me. But his ceiling of what he can produce is higher than a lot of the different selections. And he's a more solid pick than the bolter that I chose in terms of Asher Odefor. Forgotten his second name in the double-barreled name. Will Stuart in. Very happy with that. And we'll round this off. This quick reaction video, we'll round it off. We're just talking about captaincy. Maro Itoje, Lions captain. Do I think, now that I've seen the announcement, that Keelan Doris would have been the captain, as my prediction was, if he was healthy? You know what? I think there's an angle to this where you're picking a captain that, how do I say this, is not of the nation of the coach. And I think that creates a unified front to a certain extent. Like it's a step in a right direction in terms of unity of the team. I think if you pick Irish head coach, Irish captain, you almost kind of have it as though it's like the British and Irish Lions team turns into the Irish team and friends, if that makes sense. So I actually like the pick. I think Itoje's done a great job at captaining England over the Six Nations. He's also a marathon man. He plays pretty much every minute for Saracens and for England. So yeah, I don't mind it, and maybe I just got that wrong. Owen Farrell not involved. I honestly, as I said, I think if Owen Farrell was picked, it would have been a bit of a nepotism pick. I don't think he's been in the form. And another thing that I thought of when I was looking at the selection and saw that Owen Farrell was not included, like, you got to remember that Owen Farrell went over to Racing 92 because he basically announced his, like, England retirement. Other than actually just announcing it, if that makes sense. Please tell me if that doesn't make sense. But when he's moving to Racing 92 and he knows the England policy of not picking players that are playing in England, and he's aware how old he is, and he's doing a 2-year contract, he must be thinking at that point, I'm done with England. So to then be picked on a Lions tour when you've pretty much retired from England duties always felt wrong in that regard as well. So I think that's another factor of why Owen Farrell's not going. And yeah, I think in general it looks like a really strong squad. Majority Irish, a lot of English in there. I think a lot of English have been picked because, honestly, I think because of the form they found in the second half of the Six Nations, they came into the Six Nations as a team that was seen as like, where the hell is this team going? With all the losses that they racked up in a row, and they left like second place, and the entire zeitgeist of them and the cognoscenti around them, talking about them in a very different light. So I honestly think this Six Nations has done a huge amount of heavy lifting for these England players. Obviously their club form is a part of that as well, but I definitely think there's a bunch of players in here that would not be being picked. But yeah, no, and then I think there's 8 Scottish and there's 2 Welsh. So yeah, no, I think that's fair. I think it's a fair selection. I'm looking. I think there's only one in there, and I won't go back to it so I don't highlight it. But there's only one player in there that I'm thinking like, don't know about that. The rest of them all fully deserved, and can't wait to see what they do in their first test against Argentina, which I believe is their first game. So that's it. I'm done talking now.